So that gets me right into the next question, because last time we talked, you said the same thing, which was the first job of a sniper
Yeah.
is to be sneaky. And I wanted to ask, so what other skills are there? So fieldcraft is a big one, you know,
Right.
but like if in your mind, like I realize that from a sniper's perspective, or the job of a sniper, the actual shooting part of it is not that big of a role relative to everything else, especially when it comes to observation, intelligence gathering, all that kind of stuff. But what else? What other skills does someone should they have if they wanted to be, a well-rounded sniper?
Okay. They have to be able to apply the principles of whatever theory of camouflage that they're using, and they have to be able to move tactically in basically in I'm trying to avoid that word envelope because my Pete Kokalis overdid it when he was writing for Soldier of Fiction magazine. But in every configuration of the human body, whether you're low crawling flat on the ground or you're walking upright, you have to be able to move tactically, and that means silently, and you have to be aware of your environment, and you have to be able to be a here. I'll ask you. I'll ask you the same question that I ask every one of my students when I begin teaching fieldcraft.
Mm.
Little thought experiment, and give it some thought. Don't feel you're not timed on your responses. Okay?
I'll just edit out to make it sound like I had a really fast response.
So, if you have somebody with perfect observation skills looking for somebody with perfect concealment skills, what's going to be the outcome? If you have somebody who's a master of concealment going up against somebody who's a master of observation, what's going to be the outcome?
My gut is to say nothing. That the person who the concealment is going to win because there's nothing to be observed.
Correct. See, you're one of that. Now, believe it or not, there's very few people that actually get that. They're like, it'd be a draw. It's like, how's it a draw? But anyway, so the thing is, how does observation work? Observation works by picking up mistakes that people are making.
Mhm.
Ergo, if the person they're looking for doesn't make any mistakes, there's nothing to see. Okay. So this is kind of like the whole, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, doesn't make a sound. Well, the thing is, if I can't detect a sniper in the woods, is there one there? And that's what you have to, what you're doing is you're basically you're fighting the mind of your opponent.
Mhm.
All right. It's not a physical fight. I mean, you're crawling on each other from 400 meters apart. Okay. You're not in a physical altercation. But the thing is, it's like, okay, or, like in the case of police sniping, you're coming up, you're stalking up to put eyes onto a meth lab prior to a raid. I don't want them to know that there's anybody out here. Okay. But then there's other situations where it's like, okay, they know there's going to be somebody out there. Well, I don't want them to know that they're a police sniper. Well, they know that there's police snipers out there. Well, I don't know. I don't want them to know where they are. See, so it's like this whole continuum of stuff you can get away with.
Mhm.
All right, because doing this stuff completely, it's one of these things where you can be. We used to tell people on the stalks, and it was my partner, one of my partners at Fort Bragg, Mike McClister. He instituted. We started doing 1,000-yard stalks against an observer, and it was one of these things where basically initially guys start off and they're moving an inch at a time and everything else, and then they would realize, hey man, you got a time limit. Okay. And just like in real life, you don't have 3 days to move 100 yards. Okay. You have to be there on time and on target without being detected. So you have to strike a balance.
Mm-hmm.
So, so like I said, there's a tactical movement. There's the principles of camouflage. You have to be a good observer in order to be a good concealer. So that way you know what people are looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what knocks me out is this whole emphasis on this ghillie suit thing. Okay. Because and in my other book, Sniper's Notebook, I have a whole chapter on why ghillie suits don't work, why it's not a good idea, and I'll summarize it. I'll summarize one of the stories in the chapter. But basically, I was working at a sniper school with the 10th Special Forces group, and we had team guys, but we also had, because it was a unit school, we also had 10th group support guys going through when we had enough slots. And I never had a problem with that. So because in special forces doctrine, who is supposed to defend the base camp while the teams are downrange, playing the fool, and it's support guys. So I had no problem with sniper qualifying support guys. So they go through the school. So we had this kid named Mosley, and he was a truck driver. And he was partnered up with this team guy, John Meadows, who I knew. And, normally everything is like laid back and informal and everything else. Meadows is like making Mosley address him as Sergeant Meadows and all this other stuff. So one day, the first sergeant stops by, and he was actually an old teammate of mine. So he comes by, and we're catching up and all this stuff. And Meadows goes, "Hey, Top, you're the support company. You're the support company first sergeant, huh? I want you to meet one of your men." And they just come back from a stalk. So Mosley's wearing a ratty T-shirt. He's got camo on his face. I mean, he's a mess. Okay, he's a sergeant major's nightmare, and he's meeting his first sergeant for the first time, thanks to Meadows. So I pulled the first, I pulled First Sergeant Christina off to the side. Hey, Chris, this is what's going on. He's like, yeah, he understood. Mm-hmm. But Mosley was like so ticked off at Meadows, you couldn't believe it. So we're getting ready to go on a stalk, and guys are all ghillied up, and Mosley goes up to Meadows, and he goes, "Wow, Sergeant Meadows, how'd you build your ghillie suit here? What kind of garnish do you have on this?" "Oh, well, I've got, burlap here and this and that." And meanwhile, everybody else is watching. Meadows pulls a piece of orange parachute silk out of his pocket, ties it to the back of Meadows' ghillie suit as a flag. And we're all watching it going, "Good one, Meadows. Yeah, good one, Mosley." Okay. So they take off on the stalk, and don't think anything about it. Now, the way a stalk normally works is they have two blanks, and the first blank is essentially a signal for a walker to come over there and then run through this whole thing where you stand. Okay, you tell the observation point, I'm this close to him, or he's in this direction. Okay, and then you narrow it down, and then he fires the second blank to see if he's concealed the muzzle flash. So I get up there, I find out it's Meadows, orange flag and all, has made it all the way up to his firing point. And I go ahead and work him because I was working as a walker. He passes the stalk with an orange flag on his back. And it was really funny because it's like, I said, "Okay, head on up to the OP." And I radio up there. I said, "Hey, tell Meadows to look at the back of his ghillie suit when he gets up there." And he gets up there, and across the whole stalking lane, which was like it was on a drop zone. You hear this, "Mosley, I'm gonna kill you!" But I looked at that and I'm going, this guy just passed a stalk with a fluorescent orange panel on his back. why are we teaching people to put 50 pounds of burlap on their backs in order to hide from observation?
Mm.
And then that just created a whole paradigm shift to where I got to stop teaching ghillie suits because, the stuff is unnecessary,
So it comes back to just good understanding of camouflage available to you,
Yeah,
motion, and
yeah,
noise.
but it also comes down to people don't know why they do what they do.
Mhm.
So everybody talks about, it's really interesting looking up sniping online every once in a while because it's just like either you'll find out something really interesting or you'll hear something really stupid. And like, you always hear about, well, the Brits and they had the Lovett Scouts, and that's how ghillie suits came into it and all this stuff. I actually found an official history of the Lovett Scouts in the British Army that had been written by the current Lord Lovett. And there's something so interesting in there that I went ahead and I scanned it in and I highlighted it and I keep it in my files because it explains how the Lovett Scouts actually did a stalk in wartime. So it was during the Boer War in South Africa, and they had this. They have these like 3-draw telescopes, like Jack Sparrow uses, called a Scout Regiment telescope. It's about a 24 power scope, and in the history of the Lovett Scouts, Lord Lovett was talking about in the Boer War, these 2 Lovett Scouts stalked up on a Boer sentry over a distance of 800 yards. And there isn't a single mention of ghillie suits.
Hmm.
And the way they did it was, you and I are out stalking, okay? I pull out my scope. We're cammied up, okay? But it's like I pull out my scope and I'm looking at the sentry. Every time he faces away from us, I say, "Go, Matt." And you crawl forward just, as quickly as you can and, without floundering around. And then as soon as he starts to turn back around to face us, I say, "Stop," and you pancake.
Mm.
Then, whatever distance you traveled, you pull out your scope, open it, look at the sentry, and as you see him turn around, you go, "Go, John." And
So
then
it's just bounding. It's just
yeah.
bounding the same way you
So,
would.
yeah. So the thing is, it's like if the guy isn't looking at him, they're for all intents and purposes, by definition, they're invisible.
Hmm.
And there's no mention of 50 pounds of comb burlap or anything, or canvas skid pads on the front of coveralls or anything else. It was just good tactical movement and a procedure that was able to get them from point A to point B unobserved.
All right.